Won't Arya be hosting this meeting also? Arya? Won't Arya be coming today for today's event?
Arya's here. She's just in the breakout room and she'll be coming back in a sec.
Okay. I didn't see her in the participants.
Yep, she should be here right now. No, now. Up. There we go. Okay, welcome everybody. For those of you that are here on our or watching on YouTube, welcome. My name's David Layton, president and co-founder of Witty. We're thrilled to be here today with such an exciting session that's going to really give us some tools, great information to prepare for 2021. So with that, let me just kick it over to our head of Witty India, Arya Murali. Welcome, Arya.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and have this conversation with you all, which I think is a very important one at that too. So without much ado, welcome to all of our panelists for the day. We have Dimple Beck from TCS, Uma Kasoji from The Star and Me, she's an entrepreneur. We have Kavita Rajamani from SAP and Rituparna Mandal from MediaTek. So very warm welcome to all of you, and also welcome to all of the attendees, who are attending here in the Zoom room or on YouTube. Happy to sort of be having this conversation today. And with that, let's get started. So essentially today I'm going to pose a few questions or prompts to our speakers, but do know that you can keep sharing your questions in the chat box, and we will have a Q&A session after the panel discussion where we will definitely be taking a look at your questions, right? So keep your questions coming in the chat boxes, and let's get started. So essentially I was thinking, just reflecting on the last 7 months and wondering how none of us sort of expected something like this to show up. So, life really presents us with challenges on a daily basis, some new challenges, some familiar ones. But what's essential is that we adapt and leverage to these constraints and challenges, and sort of continue our personal growth in that process. So how have you used the last 7 months of COVID or working from home or shifting to this new normal to your advantage? And I think, Kavita, if you could start by sharing your thoughts on this, would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Arya. Warm evening to every one of you. Honestly, the last 16, 17 years of my career, before this COVID time, I'd have hardly worked 4-5 days from home. I'm more of that kind of a person, who wants to meet in person, have that discussion in person. I'm that kind of a person. So when, the whole work from home started, it took me a while to kind of settle down. But thankfully, my husband runs a startup. So he's been, doing this work from home for years together now. So I could kind of, learn a few tricks from him, or, a few things that I could learn from him and kind of get my rhythm sorted out right at the beginning. Yeah. So now when I look back, how has it kind of worked to my advantage? Of course, this commute time to office is kind of, that is a major gain for all of us here in Bangalore. So that I could kind of invest back into, sometime into my, personal life as well and into work. So, and it brought in a lot of discipline into, how I work. So come what may, rain or shine, I'm a person who starts my day early. So, and every day it's like, just like how you go to work, dress up the way you would leave home. I would do the same thing every day, dress up well as though, you're getting to work, and then start your routine as though it's just like any other work day. So all the office setup is right here. So it is not like I'm not the person who, sit in the dining table, work at the balcony. So I need my, the proper setup, dress up as you're able to work, and then, get into your room and have that routine. And I was very particular that, it does not kind of, your work and everyday routine kind of does not merge. Because otherwise, initially it just so happened that, you're doing half stuff at home and, half into meetings and all that. So that kind of didn't set well. So good thing when I look back, I was able to train personal front. I was able to train my kids to become self, kind of sufficient, help out with the whole house chores and take care of their studies and all that. So that, my involvement was kind of pretty limited to wherever my support was needed. Could short out, and on the personal front, I teach music. So I could get a lot of online students, which was not a possibility at all in the past. Now, learning music was more of with the student in-person experience. But now, surprisingly, what I thought would not work well, now when I look back, is working beautifully. So students from any part of the world can now, connect with you and we learn music. That's been a big eye-opener for me. And yes, on the professional front, definitely. It's helped in me being able to kind of mark those, times of the day where, I spend doing what I really want to focus on, either just read up the strategy paper of the organization or take a small e-learning course or whatever, which when I was in the office, when somebody has a doubt, immediately you pause your e-learning and you jump into the other conversation, which was never possible back then. Now, when I look back here, it's all worked well, and I'm happy and glad about it.
Amazing. I think it's interesting to note, how we all, I mean, me included, we thought certain things was not doable in the past, but because we were forced to do it, we're doing it and it's working out well enough, right? So that makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you so much, Kavita. Dimple, what are your thoughts, on how you've sort of made use of the last 7 months, personally, professionally, and just in sort of fueling your growth? Dimple, you're on mute.
Thanks, Arya. So
Yeah.
for me, most part of the story that Kavita told about her life is applicable for me, and I think for everybody in general. So, being in India, the commute time that got reduced with this work from home worked a lot better than what we used to have before the pandemic hit us. But there are a couple of things that I had never even given a thought, even nobody would have. So with all of these, actually the first thing that I did in all these months was doing a retrospection, was introspection of actually what I'm doing, whether it's making any sense for me or whether it's adding value to me or anybody else. I'd like to share a personal story in this regard. Actually, just before this lockdown, and I'm also the kind of person Kavita mentioned who would like to be in office if I can. Be it hail or storm, I'll be in office. So work from home was pretty rare for me, and I didn't know what it felt like. So it is a story of one of the Fridays. Me and my son had made a plan the prior day that we would bake together, and we had gotten everything ready, all set. And come Friday, I was stuck due to some work as usual. And that day I returned late and I saw my son sleeping in an apron. That was such a shocker to me. And all these months, he then never asked me that would we bake together. So I realized what impact that incident had on him. And what would have happened if I had just left the work and be at home? That would have been a lifetime of credibility for me in my son's view. But there I lost credibility for myself just for a small ask. And no matter how much I tried to remember what I was doing that Friday night, I couldn't remember. And no matter how much I tried to forget that scene of seeing my son in an apron, I couldn't. So that was my trigger point for introspection, the way I'm leading my life. Whether it would make a difference 10 years down the line, or forget 10 years, whether it would make a difference just 1 year down the line. And here I made a mistake that is going to cost me a lifetime of credibility in front of my son. So in this 7 months, I did a lot of introspection on what my habits are, how I'm dealing with my close people, whether I'm keeping my words or I am keeping my words, what I say at office, not at home. What a huge difference it made. That was one, introspection, this 7 months. And I think I'm very much now clear about my priorities. Now, next is this pandemic gave me a new, I would say, a set of wings, because there were a couple of things I couldn't have done because of location constraints. Now, many of the things have opened up, like this forum. It would have been not possible because we were all scattered across the countries, across the globe. But now, when everybody is virtual, it has made a lot of things easier. Now we meet people whom we had never thought that we would be meeting in such forums. So I had increased that forum participation, and I'm more inclined to do so more in the future. Thirdly, as in my personal life, I did the introspection, what I'm doing, whether it matters uh, down the line or not. In the professional front also, we don't know how much this is gonna last, how long we will be working from home, or whether this will ever get back to what it was. And I think the world itself has changed to how we knew it. So I thought, how would I be able to upgrade myself to be relevant in my professional career? So TCS being very pro employee, and we were made available all the kind of trainings, all virtual. So I made a very disciplined calendar for myself, that I would see what skills are required, which keeps me relevant coming forward, the new challenges that we will have when once this gets over, or maybe it doesn't get over. So there were a couple of very interesting skills, like being a software engineer. Of course, I was very inclined towards the technology courses. But one thing I found very relevant here is not just those technologies or the domain, the soft skills that come in. How to converse in a virtual age. Oh my God, that Coursera course actually gave me insights how to deal with now what we are in the situation. It was easier to speak one on one, in person, or to a great audience in person, because we were getting instant feedback. Now, it took me a good amount of practice. I would say I practiced for 6 months to start speaking, looking at the camera dot. Otherwise, I was just looking someplace else. That was one good learning for me. And I know that it's not going to stop, because it would require very new skills to survive. Next is, I realized that expanding my network, that too virtually. Now, be it VC's forum, this is one good example of how we can expand our network. So be it my professional network or personal network, I'm trying to learn how I can do this going forward. So, and I will have to keep learning it. And then most passionate about, I was able to rekindle what I was not able to do earlier. Now I have my time and energy source, so I have rekindled all my passions, which I wasn't able to do so earlier. So that's from my
Thank you. Thanks, Dimple. I think just from both your responses, I feel we're all finding new avenues for creative expression, for sort of going back to what we really enjoy doing, what we really believe. So I think it's a there is a silver lining after all, despite all of those troubles. Um, but having said that, I feel some of us are very fortunate in the sense that our careers were not affected as much, or our jobs were not affected as much. But there are so many people out there, and one of the toughest challenges has been, to find new jobs, or cope with being furloughed, or just having to switch careers when it is such a difficult time. So, if you could sort of step into the shoes of somebody in that position and talk a bit about how you would approach the situation if you were in their place. And maybe, Uma, let's start with you. And I know that you work with a lot of women, especially in coaching them, in equipping them to take up careers. So let's hear from you.
Sure. In fact, there are quite a few people who unfortunately have lost jobs during this time. And there are a few things that I would recommend they do. The first thing is, to sort of understand what's happening in the market. Incidentally, it's a very good sign. I was having a conversation with a couple of recruitment firms, partners of ours, in the past week, and the market has seen a resurgence in hiring. In fact, come Jan 2021, I think there will be more hiring than there was in all of this year or even last year. So the market is picking up. One should basically try and understand what's happening in the job market, what kind of organizations are hiring, especially in the sectors that they are in. So getting a feel of that will be very important. That's the first thing. The second thing is during such times, it helps to rely on your network. And one of the best networks that one can leverage is alumni networks that one has. So wherever you graduated from, it's extremely helpful to tap into your alumni network. It's very likely that a lot of them may have connections that they can, help with. So tap into your networks, let them know you're looking out for opportunities, and put it out there. So you never know who might come up with an opportunity for you. The third thing I would suggest is to invest in upskilling. And a lot of panelists so far have mentioned that upskilling is a big deal right now. When you have the time, you might as well spend time doing that. So considering the rate at which industries are changing now, not only due to COVID, but due to technology advances, it makes sense to try and understand where your industry is headed. And there will certainly be aspects that you are not aware of as yet. So invest in upskilling. There is so much free content, free courses, free masterclasses that are available. So it makes sense to invest in them and invest in yourself by upskilling yourself. The fourth aspect that one should do is invest in building a personal brand. This is something that takes a backseat for so many of us. Especially if you're looking for a job, you want to be in a position where people approach you saying, Uma, I have a lovely offer for you. Would you like to join us? So for you to be in that position, you need to create a brand for yourself. So whatever is your niche, whatever it is that you're really good at, create a brand by putting out some content there. And now there are so many ways to put out content, right? Write blogs, start a podcast, create a short YouTube video. So there are so many ways to do this. I think I would encourage everyone to figure out what their niche is and come up with thought leadership ideas. It need not be like a 10-page white paper. It could be even a small thought that you can post on relevant forums. So that is one thing you must do. Invest in building your personal brand. And finally, I think you should be very proactive in your job search. While you can put in your CV in a couple of job platforms and wait for people to approach you, all of us at some point in time would have some dream companies, right? Companies that we would have loved to work with. So try and create a list of those 10, 15 dream companies that you have. Figure out who you know in those companies. It's very easy to do a LinkedIn search, and if let's say you want to join a particular company, who works there, and is within your first or second level of connects, and then try and approach them and see if there are openings and if they can refer you within those organizations. So such a proactive approach actually does pay off quite well. So these are the 5 things that I would recommend. Rely on your alumni networks, upskill yourself, build your personal brand, proactively approach people in the market, and then what else did I miss? There was something else I mentioned. Yeah, but these are the key things. So invest in yourself and do not give up hope. Yeah, the other thing was to understand the job market. Try and understand where the market is headed. Like for instance, just 2 days ago, AWS, Amazon Web Services, said they would invest $2.2 billion in creating a huge setup in Hyderabad, in Telangana. So if you're based in Hyderabad, this should be something that should propel you into action to figure out what AWS does, what kind of jobs are likely to come up, and can I invest in myself by upskilling myself in that time. So yeah, these are the 5 things that I would recommend people do.
Thanks, Uma. Thank you so much. Ritu, what are your thoughts on this? And since Uma has given a very comprehensive answer, I wanted to add one more slight bonus question for you. Virtual onboarding is happening these days, and I've seen a lot of people struggle with that, especially those who are just graduating and getting into a workplace scenario. They have no clue what it is even supposed to look like, and they're thrown into this virtual setup, with or without enough communication and support, even just to sort of emotionally and mentally manage whatever is going through, right? And even if it's for somebody else, even if they're experienced, just to get a hold of the company's culture, understand how different people work, different teams function, it's been a challenge. So if you could throw a bit of light into that as well, along with how people can find roles, and also excel at them in their first couple of days or months.
So yeah, so I think Uma, like you mentioned, Uma has already, given a very comprehensive list of things that one really needs to look out for, and I would agree to all the points that she has mentioned. So I don't want to kind of, reiterate any of them. But the only thing that I would still like to add on to that before I go on to the virtual onboarding experience is that, and I personally, have been fortunate, and many of us, like you mentioned, have been fortunate to have gone through this entire phase. Yes, there has been a lot of, working from home, resettling yourself into this new normal and stuff, but still, we have a job at the end of the day, and touch wood, I think, that's a huge thing, a huge bonus to have. But I do have friends, and I do have, I know people who have, unfortunately, because, the whole scenario has changed. So many jobs that were needed when, you were meeting face to face, and so many, like, in the travel industry, in the sales and marketing industry, in the F&B industry as well. There are so many jobs that are just not needed right now, right? Because we don't know when this will go back to a new normal, right? So the only thing that I would like to add, and I'm very passionate about this, and that's why I thought I would talk about it, in addition to what Uma mentioned, is, this may sound like a cliche, but I think it's really up to us how we treat a situation, right? And it is much easier for someone to talk about it than someone who's really going through it and reacting accordingly. But if you could step aside, just step back and look at it from a point of view, how do I react to this situation? Do I treat myself like a victim? Because yes, I am a victim of the situation. It is true. But do I treat myself like that? Or do I treat it with a positive, attitude and a positive mindset, where I treat this situation into a complete opportunity, right? In this, especially if you look at it in our country, and I think, worldwide this is happening, the opportunities for startups, the opportunities for doing something different is so high. Yes, you might take a short-term hit, right? A couple of months. But if you had an idea that you were thinking of for a long time and you were not able to invest time in, maybe, this loss of your certain job that you had is actually a boon and opportunity to pursue that passion and that interest that you have and give it a shot. Because unless you give it a shot, you will not know whether it worked or not. And this is the right time to do it, right? Of course, it can't be in a field that is not applicable now. So like Uma mentioned, I think it's very important to understand the landscape and to understand the job market and then give a shot. But if at all, this is the time to give it a shot, right? And I think, I would really encourage people to work with that positive mindset and see what can be done. On the virtual onboarding thing, actually, for example, even in our company, we've had a lot of freshers, a lot of college graduates that we have onboarded. And in addition to that, like you mentioned, we've also had a lot of experienced folks that we've onboarded. Now, for the experienced folks, I think, it is slightly easier because they have been working, all said and done. They have a certain experience of what the corporate world is like, and what they need to do to integrate themselves. So I'll start with the easy one first. And in fact, I've had specific experience with some of these experienced folks who have come on board. And it is very much a responsibility of the company who is bringing them on board to make them feel integrated, right? So to have, have regular, let's say, one-on-one sessions, team meetings, virtual team meetings where you can get to each other. My only word of advice or my only point here would be the onus is as much as on the individual itself, especially because the person is, the individual is experienced, then, he or she also needs to reach out. I think Dimple also talked about it, about networking, right? So when you come into a new company, you invest in networking. You actually try to understand your team. You actually try to reach out to people who can help you. So you can't only sit back and say that, this is the company's responsibility and everything will come to me on a silver platter. That doesn't happen, right? So I think that is, on the experienced folks. Well, it is similar even for the college graduates, but I think and I really feel bad for the freshmen who are joining, because this is a very fun time. Apart from the work and apart from the responsibilities, it's a very fun time to work also, right? Because you don't have any other familial responsibilities. You're just working. You're starting earning for the first time, so it is a time to enjoy. And this is an experience that you're missing out. So my heart goes out to them. But what I would say is, again, I would concentrate on make the most of this opportunity, because since you don't have all the other distractions, this is actually the time that you can spend a lot on learning, right? And you spend extra hours, you spend weekends on really becoming an expert in the field that you've chosen, because you won't get this kind of non-distraction time ever again. Hoping that we don't have a pandemic soon again. This is really a time that you can focus on growing your career, on building networks, on reaching out to people, even though everything is virtual, but you can do everything together. So what I would say is really, to summarize, I would say the onus is a lot on the individual, whether you're experienced, whether you're a fresher. If you want to go ahead in your career, then invest in those things that you have time for now, which you otherwise wouldn't have.
Got it. No, I mean, 100% with you on this. When I joined my first job, I would go to the coffee machine and get a coffee every 15 minutes. That was my pastime. But so my heart goes out to everybody who cannot do that and enjoy, free coffee.
Free coffee, exactly.
Right. But yeah, I'm sure it's, a lot more challenging. But I know that people are smart enough to figure out a way, and there's always help coming in, especially if you ask for it as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Makes a lot of sense, Ritu. And I think all of you have now set the context on the importance of upskilling ourselves in these times, which has been the common thread across this conversation, right? So let's just delve a bit more deeper into that and understand how do we keep up with upskilling ourselves. Maybe if we can get into some of the nuts and bolts of how do we approach this process, because it can be intimidating whenever we're learning a new thing, especially when you can't even go meet somebody and, hey, sit with me and help me understand this piece of code, or help me understand what to do in this situation. When you cannot sort of reach out to people in such an environment, it can be even more difficult, right? So if you could maybe touch upon that, that'll be great. And maybe Kavita, let's start with your thoughts on that.
Sure. So for us, being in tech industry, upskilling is not more like a choice, but it's the necessity, right? And personally, for me, upskilling is not about adding more jargons to the resume or checklist of these are all the latest things. So do I know? Yes, yes, yes. It's not more about a checklist, but more for me, I look at it as more of the joy of learning new things. Yeah. So it could be anything tech or any new skill that you can pick up. Yeah. So how passionate are you about it, and how can you learn it, and how can you know bring about some impact with it? Yeah. So for me, yeah, different people have different ways of upskilling themselves, right? So for certain people, it's like, okay, it's a structured course they enroll for and they learn. For me, what works the best is I believe in collective learning. So what we do is, and I'm fortunate to have a bunch of young, work with, or, young bunch of team who is also equally enthusiastic about learning new stuff and all that. So what we do is we identify one topic. Yeah, a couple. 3-4 years ago, it was IoT. And then last 2 years, it's been machine learning and all that. And now this time we started with RPA, robotic process automation. So what we do is identify a topic, and then instead of, all of us just doing e-learning and courses, first step, we invited an expert to just give us an overview session. So first thing is, as a team, we got introduced to a totally new topic. And then after that first round of introduction, we all gather thoughts, and then we kind of come back and, we kind of discuss, saying, so it's more like, okay, what did you gather from here? Which bits of it seemed interesting and all that? And then we're like, okay, fine. Then the interesting conversations start. From not knowing anything about a topic to 10 of us now have learned or, heard about it, learned a bits and pieces here and there. And now the conversations start. Yeah. And then the interest kindles, and then we go read up a bit more. And for me, again, I also believe in not theory, but hands-on, try it out in the system. That's when, you'll be able to get it much better in your head. That's my style, but I'm not saying that's the only way. But yeah, so what works for me at least is this collective learning bit, so that each of us, even if sometimes in the past it's happened that I start off learning something, saying, okay, I will do this, I will get here, get there. But of course, in the daily grind of work and deadlines and all that, it fizzles out, the interest fizzles out. Whereas when as a team you sign up for something, even if one or two people are kind of lagging, the others kind of get them on board. So that is kind of that energy levels are high when you learn as a team. That's one thing that has worked for me. And yeah, and doing POCs in the system and trying to connect the business line that I'm working on with and the technology. For me, that's where, to see the impact of the technology in the solutions that we offer. Yeah. So it's not about learning the syntax of any new language, but it's about saying how this can be applied to solve a business problem. So when I try to connect that and understand the real impact that this new technology or whatever could bring to the table, then, it gives me a high, basically. Yeah. So that's one thing. And it's not just about technology upskilling. Yeah. It's also about, for me, I have to be constantly on the move. For me, it's about what have I, learned today. So simple things. Because of this lockdown, when I go for walks, it's a habit that within the apartment, I go for a walk with my son every day. What just started off as I telling him one story a day. So 2-3 days, I told him a story. And now last 6 months, every day I've been telling him a story. Do I know all of them? No. But that's become like, okay, now this is something I have to keep adding to my kitty because there's somebody who's, wanting me to learn kinds. And yeah, that's one thing. Or before this pandemic, I was, last year I was with a South Korean customer. We're working on machine learning was the topic that last few years I've been working on. So we were supposed to be analyzing a lot of data of the customer. Yeah. Technology wise, it's all clear, but the data had a lot of, it was all codes, but a lot of, texts which were in Korean language. Yeah. Had it been normal, I would have just Googled certain words, but it's customer's system. You don't have access to Google, nothing. The only option that I had was, ask them saying, what does this translate to? Once you ask, twice you ask, but for me, it was extremely important that I understand that data before I can do anything with it. And it's not text, but just codes in, Korean language, maybe whatever they've done. So Wednesday, we started the exercise. Thursday, Friday, you're not very comfortable going and disturbing them for every terminology and all that. So simple. And Friday in a conversation during lunch, they mentioned, yeah, by the way, Korean is a very easy language, 27 alphabet, constructs you learn and it's done. That one statement was enough for me. Yeah. So over the weekend, I sat and learned that language. Yeah. So it wasn't too hard. It was about, okay, it's needed for my job. And yeah, that was a kind of upskilling for me. It was a technical job, but did they want me? Did they expect me to learn the language? Not at all. But Monday, when it was being projected, not like, over the weekend, I could master it, obviously, right? But whatever little bits I could. So Monday, when it was being projected, when I tried to read, the kind of respect that now the customer gives you, not because suddenly they have figured out that, wow, you're a geek. No, the respect, your credibility increases because now the customer knows I'm genuinely making an effort. Yeah, that bit of that increases the credibility for you. And from there on, it was an awesome working with the customer. So that 2 days of investment that I did in learning that language kind of helped me turn the whole equation with the customer, because the working styles are all different, right? They only talk when you ask them a few words, and information wasn't forthcoming. There was slight, you know a what to say, a small barrier. But this kind of changed the equation for us. Yeah. And it kind of, from there on, it worked beautifully. So for me, upskilling, like I said, is not just about technology. Anything, a new skill, new language, new recipe, new story, anything, you keep upskilling. That's it kind of, for me, boosts my confidence as well. And that it can, create a lot of impact. That's how I see it. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, Kavita. I mean, it sums up, sort of everything, and puts it very, very concisely and nicely, right? So, Ritu, you again have a tough job of adding flavor to this. But over to you for your thoughts on, how can one specifically upskill themselves? Especially since the topic of the day is also that, right? Like how we have still maybe less than 2 months to go, but that is still good enough to sort of set ourselves up for success for what's coming up, because we don't know how it's going to be. So over to you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like Kavita, like you said, I mean, she has really talked a lot about upskilling and sharing her personal stories, and I'm sure all of us have our own stories of upskilling as well. Upskilling in a way has become the buzzword, right? So if you're not upskilling, then you're not relevant, honestly speaking. So I think that is one thing that, as the sooner people understand, the sooner they will be successful in their careers. And this I'm talking about even for, I think it's applicable to whether you're an entry, into the career level, and you're an entry or junior freshman into the corporate world, into the working world, or you're very senior, you have worked for a long time, in these areas. So I think, obviously, I won't talk about the very obvious things in terms of, if you look at it, one of the things that not only this pandemic, but even before that, if I look at, probably the last 2 years or so, the number of so-called upskilling possibilities that are out there, available, accessible to you, even if you can be in a small town, you can be in a big city, you can be anywhere. But things like on Coursera, things like on Skillshare, all these things are easily accessible to you, right? And I mean, yes, some of them do have, Udemy, all these things. I mean, I'm not, I'm not only picking out these names. I'm sure there are many more platforms like this which offer courses. And honestly speaking, not all of them are very expensive, right? So many times I think, people feel a little bit of, oh, should I spend so much? What am I really going to gain from it? You don't know what you're going to gain from it today. But if you are willing to invest that time today, the return on that investment is sure to come at some point in time, right? Just like Kavita talked about, upskilling on the Korean language. I mean, it helped her on that product, but I'm sure the credibility that she was able to build has stood her, the test of time for many, many longer years. It's not only that. So I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is, don't look at what the short-term gains are, right? So even if you're planning to upskill, and if it's if it's not a very relevant topic for you, don't worry about it. If it is something that interests you, if it is something that you're passionate about, just go ahead and invest time in learning more about that. So I don't know, I'm sure this is a story that many of you already know of, but Steve Jobs, when he was when he was running Apple, and he was a dropout from college, right? So he didn't complete college. But one of the courses that he did take was on calligraphy. And that whole thing of calligraphy actually came into so much use. The fonts of the Apple and the Mac were totally different, but that is something that he had, kind of kept in his mind and brought forth. So that what I'm trying to say is what you upskill today can even be applicable to you, 4 years, 5 years down the line, but it will be something that is within you and you can reuse, right? So I think two things that I would like people to take away, from this is upskilling is no longer a choice, right? It is something that you must do. So if I have to share my own story, for example, I started off with just plain simple in the semiconductors. I started off with layout design, right? Now, if I had decided, yes, I can become an expert in layout design and continue my career in there. But if I had not widened my horizons and said, okay, I won't only look at layouts, I'll actually look at circuits. No, I won't only look at circuits. I'll actually look at the whole chip design. I won't only look at chip design. I'll look at how it's applied in a system. Unless I upskill myself, today, I have worked in TI, in a big corporate, in many roles through many of these. Then I started my own company. That was just because I was willing. When you upskill yourself, in a way, you're preparing yourself to face the unknown, right? I think that is a huge skill that inherently gets developed in you if you're able to upskill yourself with different things. Then you're not scared, because if there's a problem that is going to be thrown at you, you can actually grab it and run with it. That is a different skill that you pick up. So to be an entrepreneur, to be able to take risks in your careers. And for example, after that, when I came into media tech, and then I was I was told to take on the whole processor design, the whole high performance technology team, and now the entire site. I no longer felt scared, because it's like I've been there, done that. It's about learning something new. So I think I very much also agree with Kavita that if your mindset is set to, I am going to learn something new every day, I'm going to be willing to try out new things without fear, then these are all the side benefits of upskilling as well, right? One is that it is very much necessary for your job, but the other thing is the side benefits are so many that you don't know when it's going to become useful for you, later on in your career, right? And now, especially, like this whole topic of leveraging, the rest of 2020, we don't have too much time left, but it's not only about this, right? I think if any people who are attending this conference today at least make a mind shift change, right? I think, make a mindset shift in terms of, this is what I need to do. It's not about doing it in only these 2 months, but this is what I need to change in my life, that I will invest, 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day learning a new skill. That is the time you set aside for yourself to secure your future, nobody else's. And this is something you owe to yourselves. And especially as women, because this is women in technology, this is something that we don't do. If you look at it, men are, I completely believe in diversity, but men are just better at it. If they really, if they decide that they are going to do something, they actually set out that time. They're not multiplexing on whether dinner is ready, whether kids are getting ready, whether other things are happening. They actually make that time. So I think this is something we need to get a little smart about, right? If I say I'm going to spend 2 hours a week or whatever, doing a Coursera complete thing, you spend that time, right? Because nothing comes for free. So you need to really spend that time. So I think, these are a couple of points that I would like to make.
Absolutely, Ritu. Lovely. And I think that's the underlying point, right? That there has to be a mindset change.
Yeah,
Is there an audio echo coming?
No, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
It
All
was
right.
a little audio issue. You sound better now, Arya.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. So, I'm somebody who believes that in addition to upskilling ourselves and actually having the ability to get a job done, it's also important to be seen and known as somebody who can get it done, because that's the only way opportunities will come to us. And a big part of that responsibility is on us to ensure that other people know that we are here. Hey, I'm still doing, all of these great things, and I need you to consider me for certain opportunities, right? And when I was in the office, I think it was way more easier because they would see you working 20 hours, 12 hours, whatever that time is. And maybe it was easier to create an impression, at least, that, we're investing so much time and effort into it. But now that everything's virtual, nobody's looking over our shoulders. Nobody's even here to see how much effort we're putting in, or what exactly we're doing on a day-to-day basis, what are our accomplishments. So the question here is, how do we then maintain our visibility while working from home? And Uma, let's start with you. You talk a lot about building a personal brand, having a presence, and so on. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, this is in fact one of my favorite topics. I have around 17 years of work experience, and in the first couple of years of my experience, I firmly believed that if I sat in my cubicle in one corner of the office, put my head down and did work, then people would recognize how brilliant I was and, reward me and promote me and so on. But then reality sort of stepped in, and I understood that that's not how the world works, unfortunately. So, and I've seen this with a lot of women, we sort of don't want to talk about what we're doing because we are afraid it sounds like bragging. But I've realized over time that it is completely necessary. Unless you speak about your work and about yourself, no one will take the time to come and, understand what you're doing. So your career is your responsibility, and the onus lies on you to make it known to people as to what you're doing. Like you rightly said, in office, it is easier because, you bump into somebody in the coffee area or in the elevator, and then they ask you, someone senior, they might ask you what you're working on and you tell them. But now that is not going to happen in a virtual environment. So a couple of things that one could probably do is whenever you attend these team meetings or organizational events, right, it's very natural for people to be off video, stay on mute, do something else, and not really pay attention. And when it's time for Q&A, then nobody asks any questions. So in fact, be the first one to ask a question during the entire session. It doesn't take more than a few minutes to think up a question. If you're paying attention, I'm sure there'll be questions that will popping up in your mind. So be the first one to ask a question. That's how people will realize that you're in the room, that you're paying attention, and that you understood whatever it is they're trying to tell you. So participate in these virtual meetings. That is very important. The second thing is whoever is that person, whether it's your manager or your super boss, keep him or her informed about whatever it is that you're doing. So, since you're not meeting in person, drop in a mail on, a weekly, fortnightly sort of basis saying this is what has happened and these are some highs and lows and so on. So keep that communication channel open, send an email or, whatever it is, whatever is your chat system within your organization. Do ping somebody if they seem, if they're on green and you can ping them. Give them a short status update. I think that's very necessary. So these are a couple of things that you can do within the organization. But one other thing in line with the personal branding topic that I was talking about, it's very important to make yourself visible outside your organization also, because end of the day, whenever I go and speak at any event, if I see a large crowd, I tell them I'm actually flattered even before I start talking, because it's very likely that majority of you would have looked me up online and you found something that made you think that it's worth coming and listening to me speak for an hour. So Google, basically your personal brand is defined by what Google says about you. When someone looks for you, searches your name on Google, the search results will determine who you are as a person. So look yourself up on Google if you haven't already done that. Figure out what kind of search results are coming up. Make a plan as to what you would want those results to look 6 months down the line, and make an effort to do work that will generate that sort of a personal brand for you. So attend the right kind of events. Many people that I know don't even have an updated LinkedIn profile. Nobody, in social media, it's fine what you do on Facebook, Instagram, but what you do on LinkedIn and Twitter is important from a professional standpoint. So make the time to post something that is of interest to you in your area, comment on someone else's post, ensure your profile is updated, create content, like I said, blogging or podcasts or whatever. All these things will go towards enhancing your personal brand. So look at visibility from both these aspects, within the company, outside the company. And I think that will, in fact, I've written a blog about personal branding, and I've done several sessions, some of which may be available on YouTube. So do look it up. I think that's one big investment that you could potentially make. If you've not already started on personal branding, you're already late. Please do get started on it right away. It'll pay great dividends. Keep at it for at least 3 to 4 months and you will start seeing results, trust me. So that's my advice on this.
Thanks, Uma. Dimple, let's hear your thoughts on this.
So Uma covered the important points. So adding to it, the same about personal branding. So whether or not one has been consciously developing a personal brand, one already has a brand. The one thing to ponder is whether that brand image is working for us or not. So probably it also gets important that we get also a 360-degree feedback from our peers, colleagues, friends, family to know that what I think about myself, is it the same image that I'm projecting, and is it the people around me are thinking about me? So that's one thing that I would say.
Thanks, Dimple. That makes a lot of sense. And for everybody else, please Google yourself. I'm a big advocate of having your own personal website. I mean, I feel all of these social media sites restrict us in terms of how we present ourselves, but a personal website is, an open canvas, and you can paint your picture however you like it. So that is my 2 cents on that. We are running late, but having said that, we'll still have a breakout room for maybe 5 minutes where we can get to know each other. And then, please feel free to drop your questions in the comments. We can come back for a very quick Q&A for 5 minutes and wrap it up. Dave, let's have the breakout.
Okay, I'm going to pause the recording. Hey, everybody. Ashwin, I'm going to put you in a breakout room. And
sure.
Navia, okay, let me put you in. Navia, there you go. There you go, Ashwin. Akansha, I'm going to put you in a breakout room now. So you're going to go into 3. And Laura, do you want to go into a breakout room?
No, I'm okay. I'll hang out with you in here.
Well, I had it so we'd have, there's only 2 in that room.
Oh, okay. I can go in.
Would you mind going in? Or you can stay here and I'll go in if you want to work. Because after this, can we talk? I've got to go walk Katie. I need an agenda for this network meeting. Today's such a shit show. Oops, I think we're on YouTube. Anyway, we're going to talk later.
We'll talk after.
I'll call you after. Okay, cool.
Okay. You're back.
That was weird. I came back, huh?
No.
Has your internet, you have peak internet, right?
Peak Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something going on.
It's funny, mine never freezes and mine froze this morning. I've had a couple of weird things this morning happen.
I'm going to try to go back in there now. So
okay. God, I look terrible. This is crazy. Hmm. 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 Hi. Hi.
Hey, the countdown is on.
It's so cold. Freezing. I look terrible. I'm like pasty white and
you look great.
oh God. Thanks.
I think it's just like the round witty thing next to you maybe makes it look a little whiter, because it's kind of like feels like it's reflecting off the screen.
Yeah, it is kind of, huh? Plus my skin, like when you cry a lot, like with my mom, like my skin's just been all blotchy and I've been like ice packs on my eyes and
Right.
It's not me. Here everybody comes.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I know sometimes it's hard to close the breakout rooms because the conversations were going. Aria, over to you.
Yep. Thanks, Dave. Now that we're back, I hope everybody had a nice short networking break there. Happy to take your questions right now. So this is really your time to raise your hand or unmute yourself or put in the chat whatever you want to ask the panelists. And we are having a very intimate session here. And as I'm sure you must have felt already. So feel free to be very comfortable and shoot questions. Everyone's happy to take them.
I had a question. Hi, this is Smita Gupta. I had a question. It was mentioned that one should know the market. When we have an ongoing job, which is pretty demanding, and of course, all of life to take care of, sometimes going out there and exploring the market is a whole brand new challenge. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't. Of course, we should. We have to know our ground. But I'd like to know if there are some particularly smart ways of kind of vetting out the market when you have already an ongoing job that you have no intention of leaving. And also it feels a little bit like a cheat where you're interviewing for other jobs that you neither want to take on while you are doing your real job. So just want to know thoughts about smart ways of figuring out the market. Thanks.
Anybody
So if I could, if I could take that question, Smita, very good question. One good way to get a pulse on the market is to network and talk to people across organizations, across industries. And I keep mentioning that alumni networks are a great way to do that because there is already a lot of familiarity and camaraderie in these groups. But even otherwise, whatever industry networks you have those informal discussions, find out, it's very difficult to ask people how much they're getting paid, but otherwise you can just check out what kind of opportunities are arising and get an idea about how companies are, which companies are hiring actively and so on. So keep those options open, build your network. The other thing is, in fact, there are, talking about upskilling, there are a couple of sessions or panel discussions that keep happening on these topics also, as to how the job market is evolving. In fact, through the Star and Me, we are planning something towards the end of November, where experts from across industries, including Google and a few others, are going to talk about how the job market is shaping up, which industries will start hiring, and so on. So make time to attend some of these sessions and, look at news. Again, that's a great source. So these are a few ways I think I would suggest, but would like other panelists to add.
Thanks, Uma.
Can I add one thing to that? I think for sessions like this, Smita, for some of the people you may want to build relationships with, send them, hey, you might be interested in this event, or what Uma does. Excuse me, with the Star and Me, right? So these are just great ways to reach out to people, continue to kind of keep your network going.
Yes, no, thank you, David.
The other very interesting hack that I've chanced upon is like Uma was, going on saying podcasts or start a YouTube channel. Like I found this person, Akash. He's into the VC industry and he interviews a VC every week or so, and he's named it the Desi VC podcast, right? Very interesting. You're inviting somebody for a conversation. You make them look good. You make them feel good. That's a great opportunity to get started with building a relationship. So nobody's restricting us from starting something of our own, right? And it's always good learning. So if there is a particular industry, or if you're even looking at diverse career opportunities, exploring, I find it a great way to sort of quickly get in touch with people and reach out to them and take their help.
Thanks, everyone.
Sure. Anybody else has any question?
Hi, ladies. This is Sam. I'm in Los Angeles.
Hey, Sam.
So my question is, from the other side, I've recently had the opportunity to help women be placed in Dubai as data scientists, quality engineers. And like somebody said on the panel a little bit earlier, and I've noticed with the interviewing is that when I interview the guys, they're like on it. You know, they have this track, like, okay, like a used salesman. Whereas the girls, the women, I think sometimes we don't come in as strong when we're presenting ourselves. And so moving forward, as I interview more women and of course learn about the culture, what suggestions would you have for me? Because, you know, this is, like I said, a new opportunity, a new culture, and I'm basically on the outside trying to place in this world that I don't really know about a lot. But I'm, you know, passionate about finding women to fill these roles because that's basically what they want. I know that was a big one.
So if I may, can I answer this question? I mean, can I take a stab at it at least? Yes, Sam, first of all, I mean, it must be like what, very early morning for you. So, you know, thanks for joining this, you know, discussion.
You're welcome.
So what you said was really, you know, based on all interviews that I have done, you know, I won't say it's completely true all the time, but yes, you know, there is a difference. I mean, there is still a difference between men and women and how they approach their career, right? And especially on this side of the world, I think, you know, women still treat career as an option. And, you know, that is a big problem that I have with a lot of women that I interact with, that, you know, at some point you have to stop treating it like an option. You have to treat it like, you know, it is something you want to do, you must do kind of thing. The moment you do that, you'll do everything that it takes to be on it, as you mentioned, right? Then, you know, because it's not a question of capability. It's not a question of capability difference. It's really a question of priorities. So when you are going for that interview, you know, you need to be completely on it because that is what you want. I think what I would suggest to you is that if you are finding this, you know, in these women, since you are passionate about this and you want to make an impact and a difference, then definitely, you know, the particular role that you're interviewing for has certain nuances, has certain, you know, specialities that you're looking for that a woman can bring in, you know, that diversity can actually help where, you know, it will not be covered, let's say, by something else. So I think it's up to us if we want to, you know, further this network of, you know, women in tech and women, working women. It's up to us to find what those specialities are, right? What those special characteristics are that will bring a difference to the role that I'm not getting from somebody else, right? But at the same time, I think it also becomes our duty to give feedback to that woman in terms of, yeah, I mean, you're really good and I'm hiring you, but, you know, these are things that you need to work on. So, you know, these would be a couple of points that I would say about it.
Thank you.
Awesome. We can probably take one last question and wrap up. If anybody has a question, there's nothing to be shy of or afraid of. Nobody's going to eat you. So feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Anybody?
Hey, Arya, this is Navya from Palakkad, Kerala.
Hi, Navya. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think my question is to Ms. Rituparna, ma'am. Yeah, so yeah, ma'am, you had talked about how, you know, girls, and we just had a discussion like now, how girls don't put out themselves confidently. So no, even despite having a lot of skills in them, or, you know, what do you think is that thing that, you know, holds them back? I'm talking about girls like me who aren't, say, married, or who are just you know, getting into their careers, you know, at entry level positions. I mean, what you've said, I felt it myself too during college interviews and all of that, where guys are a lot more confident when they put themselves out there. And I've even read articles where, you know, when men are even like 60% prepared, they're 100% confident, but women need to be like 200% prepared to get the same level of confidence. So what do you think is that thing that holds girls or women back, one? And two, how is it that you can improve on that?
Yeah. Navya, thank you for very apt question, and don't call me ma'am, please call me Ritu. Uh, so yeah, to be very honest, I don't think I have the absolute hit the nail on the head type of answer that what it is that really holds him back, right? But I know it's something holds them back. And to be very honest, if I look at myself, when I interviewed, let's say 23 years ago, I started working just out of campus in my first job. The way I interviewed then versus my this person now is, are completely two different people. And my confidence has built up over the years, right? And it's not that when I had interviewed, I had any less knowledge. I was one of the toppers. I was a very good student. But if I take somebody, one of my guy classmates, the way he interviewed, he was like, oh my God, he spoke so much more about what he knew about. So that is where if I go back, it is all about, all said and done, throughout society, there are certain things that have been ingrained into our systems, right? Ingrained in the sense of, okay, if you speak too much about yourself, you're not a good girl. Do you need to be a good girl? I'm just making it really brash, but that is really the thing. Does that good girl really, and no one is asking you to be a bad girl, right? But the point is that what is needed for the job, because all said and done, guys, there is a lot of competition out there, right? And the competition is not just, within men, within women. It is about good workers. It is about good engineers, for a particular job, right? So unless someone decides that I will put my whole self out there for someone to really recognize me, because especially in interviews, or especially, during that first impression makes a big deal, because that is what is going to kind of, you don't have a second chance. You don't have a second chance to say that, okay, I didn't do well in this interview. Can I get another chance? You might get, but I'm just saying, typically you don't have. So that first impression is something that really is important, and you need to go all out for it, right? So I'm not really sure what it is, but I definitely think there is a, society driven inhibitions that have either been driven in us or we have created for ourselves. And the onus is really on us to step out of that, right? Because this is something, and it's wonderful that you're asking this question, because maybe when you go for your next, whatever your interview, or your next interaction, you will be more conscious about it, right? So I think it's very important that all of us have this open discussion, that we recognize that it's there, so that we are conscious about overcoming it, right? And as like Uma talked about, and I think Dimple also talked about, building that personal brand. It doesn't matter, this whole thing of, are you appearing aggressive, are you appearing this, who cares? Am I getting the job done, right? How do I appear should not be, in anyone's thought process at all. So I think this is something that we need to be conscious about, and we need to work on. So hope I could kind of address your question.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Ritu. Just to sort of add to that, I think when I look back, right, like at school, if I get 90% or 100%, 98, whatever, everybody's applauding for you. If you win a competition, everybody was applauding for me. But in the professional life, if I tell them, hey, I got this promotion, hey, I got this hike, hey, I got this award, nobody cares. Aren't you 25? Isn't it time for you to get married? That's the only question they have. So nobody is interested in my professional life. They just want me to settle down and whatever their expectations are for me, right, to sort of comply to that. So because of all of this conditioning, at some point even you start thinking that maybe they're right. Do I really need to be so aggressive? Do I really need to be so take so much initiative and be so proactive? But I think what is important is, like Ritu mentioned, just being aware that there is a huge possibility that all of this might affect you, and it probably is already affecting you. So I think just being mindful of that and ensuring that we consciously try and avoid that is has
Yeah,
helped
I
me at
think,
least, because I
yeah.
had that fear. Yeah.
Just to add,
No, because I
yeah.
do think that years of conditioning can only be overcome when you're conscious about it, and each generation works on it, right? It's not an overnight thing that will go away. It is definitely not. But unless we are conscious about it and we work on, and especially for example, the panelists here, I think it's our duty to mentor younger generations to actually come out of it, which all of us are doing probably actively. And at some point we will see a change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
Kavita,
to
you
add
want
to
to
what
add?
this is this
said,
this is
yeah.
this is Ashwin, and I
Um,
just wanted to share one thought here, right? I mean, what Ritu said is very true, but I see a bright ray of light here that the things have started changing, a lot. And in United States, actually, there is a research study done, and now they are saying that the number of women taking over the leadership positions and executive positions is increasing, right? Which is really heartening. And same thing is happening even in India. If you look at the percentage over the years, it is really heartening to see that things are progressing in kind of in the right direction. And I agree that it is everybody's responsibility to bring that awareness in this society, and bringing that kind of a unbiased culture in the society. I think, like, slowly we will definitely see a positive shift there, but it is everybody's responsibility to participate into that. I totally agree with you, Ritu.
Absolutely. Kavita, you were
There's
adding
one.
something?
And I was just wanting to add to what Ritu said about what is holding women back, when it comes to these interviews and all that. From what I have seen, it's about wanting to be liked than wanting to be right. It's about, I want to be the, like you said, I want to be the good girl in the room. Yeah, because initial years of my career, trust me, Navya, I was so tired of everybody calling me aggressive. When men in the room answer questions or ask questions like that, they're like, wow, that guy is smart. When a design review happens and I ask three questions, one after the other, they're like, oh my God, you're aggressive. Yeah. But I was so used to getting that. But thankfully, it didn't stop me from what I was doing. Because for me, when I look back, I go back after the meeting when somebody tells me you were aggressive, I read in the conversation. And if it did seem that what I did was right, I ignore that feedback. Yeah, that's also something. I'm not saying ignore all that feedback that people give you, but when you're being assertive is being perceived as aggressive, just evaluate whether that feedback was really genuine. Otherwise, ignore, just keep moving on. Because a lot of time, we all start our careers with so much passion, but when people try to kind of brand you and all that, just don't give in. If you think what you're doing is right, just continue to do that. That's all. That's that one thing that I
Yeah,
wanted to add.
fantastic point, Kavita. Yeah, completely agree.
There was one small thing that I wanted to add to what Ritu and Kavita said. Navya, what the thing that holds us back is called imposter syndrome. It's prominent in all men and women, but more prominent in women.
Right.
That's the technical term for it.
We do
And
have.
I did want to second what Kavita said. We are not aware that the kind of branding, negative branding you get sometimes for being ambitious or out there asking questions. So just being aware that there can be a lot of negative feedback coming, which one should ignore, is so important. I've had my own struggles where you think you're getting negative feedback, but not realizing that that feedback means nothing and you should just keep on your track. So I totally second what Kavita said there. Thanks.
I think the other thing I've felt in my experience is, in terms of what we could do about such a situation, is just be encouraging. Even if you would plainly say, hey, you can do it. Why don't you give this a shot? You're good enough. Even such small acts of encouragement, small nudges, small pushes. Because I remember I was pushed to apply for the first scholarship that I got. I waited 30 days before I even started applying or started writing, right? But because somebody pushed me to sort of apply, I quickly whipped up something and I finally got it, which is what sort of led me to also go ahead and be that person who says, hey, you can do it, right? So I think it's important that each of us do that to ourselves, but also to others, irrespective of gender or whoever it is, right? Just, be positive and be encouraging.
I'm so glad that, this question, went ahead and became a discussion in itself. So I'm very glad that happened. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot, guys.
and I we should thank David for starting such a wonderful organization almost a decade back, right, or more than a decade back, right? Because that itself tells you that there are people who are trying to not just bring that awareness, but there are people who are out there to help out, right? And it's just matter of reaching out to the right mentors and kind of a right influencers, who can create or make impact on not only your life, but the lives in the society and community.
Thank you, Ashwin. And just to reflect that, when we started Witty in 1989, many decades ago, you wouldn't see many women visible in the tech industry. So a lot, people your age didn't have anybody to relate to. Now look at the women here on the panel, right? Phenomenal. They're leading companies, right? So just think about that, because right, we're not born this way. It's ingrained in us in our culture. I know we want to say stop it, but that's easier said than done. And I think just, the more you can use forms, we do have, I think, a recording of one of our Imposter Syndrome sessions at Witty, so we'll send that to you. But I think that was great points. And thank you, everybody, for participating. I thought it was a great discussion.
Thank you, Dave, for making it happen. Laura and Peggy, thank you. Ladies.
Amazing.
Okay.
This all sounds good. Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, we have many more Witty events today. Probably for those of you in India, when you wake up tomorrow morning, we have, I think it's 6:30 India time, we're having a CIO mentoring session. It's part of Witty Orange County in California. And everybody, of course, is welcome to all the virtual events. So please join us. Sorry.
Absolutely. Do join us for subsequent events as well. Please do connect with everybody on this panel or in this room. Everybody is happy to stay connected and share and be of help. And with that, I think it was a great discussion. We definitely overshot by 30 minutes, but I think it was worth it. Great conversation. And what I really loved was how Dimple started with a personal narrative of her son sleeping in the apron, and from there, how everybody added a personal perspective to the discussion and did not shy away from becoming vulnerable. And I think that's something Smita also brought up in our breakout room. I thought that was lovely, and personally to me it was heartwarming, just to sort of listen to everybody and understand these perspectives from each of your diverse lenses. So wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. We will have a lot more Witty India events coming up. Shall keep you all posted, definitely on LinkedIn and email and so on. But otherwise, you can also check out, other Witty events as well. Great things happening across the globe. The good thing is that no learning is, very constrained to a local scenario. It's all things that we can learn from each other wherever they are, at any part of the globe. So feel free to make use of all of those resources. Dave has just shared the link for the events. Go ahead and check out, and if you can, do join those conversations as well. I think with that, Dave, do you want to talk a bit about memberships? Anything that Witty can do for everybody?
Yeah,
happy to.
I think we're good. We're here to support all of you. So please let us know what you need with events like this, for new connections you want to make to build your network. And just always be building your network. It's going to help you solve a problem. It's going to help you find your next career, get advice, right? So there's all sorts of things. And that's why Witty was built, so you can right? And and Rising Star, what Uma's doing, right? There's all these amazing organizations there to support you. So leverage that, because these tools weren't there when we started, Witty, and I'm sure a lot of the ladies that were around back then would have loved to have them. So take advantage of it. That's my parting words.
Absolutely. And special thanks to the Star and Me for being our partners in crime for this event and session. And thanks, Uma, for, making that happen as well. Do you want to speak a bit, Star and Me?
Thank you. I think I mentioned in the breakout room. So the Star in Me is a global career advancement platform for women. So a lot of things that we discussed today about helping women actively manage their careers, become more confident, take on more challenges, etc. So that is all what we are trying to address through the Star in Me. There are multiple avenues for women to network with professionals across 60 countries. A lot of upskilling avenues, amazing masterclasses that we conduct, and several experts on the platform who you can seek guidance from. There's a lot of content that one can view on a variety of topics. So I would encourage all the women on today's event to check out. It's available at https://thestarandme.com. I've put in the link on the chat window. So do check that out. Would be happy to see you on the platform. And together we are stronger. And then let's not allow these national boundaries to constrain us. I think the more we interact with women across the globe, the greater our exposure and the better the opportunities. So would be very happy to see some of you on the platform.
Lovely. And I think the more we realize we're all more alike than different, that's there too. All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time. Special thanks to all our panelists, Ritu, Uma, Kavita, Dimple, and obviously David and Laura for being up so early.